Welcome to Our Next Existence by Katie and the Chorus. I'm Katie, former technology strategist turned reluctant spiritual medium, and I channel messages from the Chorus, a group of beings just beyond our sensory perceptions who are loving, expansive, and who greatly enjoy sharing their perspective of us. Join us each week as we share and discuss their ideas about humanity's existence, purpose, and future. Concepts you can draw from to accelerate your path, expand your perceptions, and ultimately step into the flow of the universe and your life. Welcome back, everyone. And for those who are joining us for the first time, welcome. Before we get into today's topic, I wanted to check in to see how all of you are doing after last week's episode. The energy of last week's episode on depression, I would liken to something like a waterfall. That kind of energy flows through us, and when it hits a blockage of sorts, our attention is drawn to it. And in that way, we get to make a conscious choice to release it or not. So I know that some of you may have had some things come up over the course of last week's episode and may have been shedding a lot of blockages. Personally, it felt like I was dropping boulders. I had some pretty major blockages get released. And I know you'd say you have a direct connection to the Chorus and you still have this stuff going on. Yeah, I'm in here too. We're all in this marvelously amazing and frustrating experience of limitation. I'm awakening too. Even when I tell the Chorus I'm ready to skip it, they assure me that no, this is everything that I have desired. So, I'll trust them. They've been right about a few things so far. In today's episode, I am excited to announce that we are getting into the topic of time. Time you could call a belief, much like the other beliefs we've covered so far about control and trust. But time is such an all-encompassing belief that affects so much of our experience here that the Chorus actually calls it a tenet, a principle of our existences. We will cover a lot of the different aspects of time in the weeks to come, so this is just a start, and I hope you enjoy it. In the first part of the episode, you'll hear directly from the Chorus themselves, and then afterwards we will discuss. Enjoy your time with the Chorus. For all the many things that humanity has created here, perhaps none is as interesting to us as your concept of earning. As with most things that humanity has developed by resonating with these frequencies of disallowance, much of it is counter or the opposite of the experience of free-flowing, infinite, loving energy from which you came. Therefore, it is a fascination to many of us how much you are embodying and experiencing beliefs that tell you at every step during your days that there are things you must do in order to earn, to be worthy of what might otherwise be given to you without question. This concept of earning is ever so slightly different than the human concept of needing to do. When a human feels like they must do something to acquire, create, or somehow enact the thing that they wish to have, what they are experiencing is a simultaneous collision of three factors: the concept or the awareness of their own desire, the recognition that it has not yet arrived in their five senses vicinity, and also great beliefs that tell you that the only way to meet that desire is to take some sort of physical action in your environment. This, you could say, is the crux of your existences here, of your experiences here as human. The nonstop driving of a human to do all day long is a great part of your experience of limitation. However, the idea of earning is ever so slightly different. Though, in order to resolve your beliefs about needing to earn, you may take action. What we would like to point out to you is the instigation of the beliefs that happens before you are inspired to such actions. Energetically, the human sensation of needing to earn is rooted in your beliefs about time and possibility. We know this will sound funny to a human, as you believe your sensations of needing to earn and worthiness come from a lack of self love, come from a lack of appreciation and a sense of deserving. However, let us explain further, and it may become clear how these things are connected. When a human senses a needing to earn, typically what has happened in their five senses environment is the recognition of a thing that they want, simultaneous with deficiencies within themselves that they believe must be compensated for or overcome before such thing is possible. It is less about the needing to do in the physical environment, and it is more about a sense of your own deficiencies. In this way, humanity has identified aspects of this, and so you attempt to overcome these sense of deficiencies as a way of addressing the root cause of this issue. However, we would like to point out to you the energetic basis for the deficiencies that you sense themselves. Humans have many beliefs about the concept of time. Though you are unconscious to a great deal of them, not only do you structure your identities and your existence by this concept of linear progression of time, you also have great connections to or embodiments of certain amounts of time that are allowed for certain things. Though it may not yet seem as obvious to you, it is very obvious to us how much time a human will allow to pass for certain things to occur before the human will begin to grow impatient, frustrated, or begin to conclude that that thing may not happen at all. We would like to suggest that often the internal ticking clock for a human has a great deal to do with the nearing proximity of the thing that they are desiring or wishing for. That is to say, that as that possibility, as that manifestation draws near, just before its arrival on the five senses spectra, is typically when the human beliefs in running out of time will become most active. This is because, as was your objective here to experience limitation, lack, insufficiency, and finiteness, it was not wanted. The experience of that manifestation was not wanted. What you desired in coming here was the experience of not receiving. Therefore, beloved ones, it should make a great deal of sense to you that as the manifestation draws nearer to you, there is a corollary increase in the number of beliefs being activated that will slow down the appearance of that thing. No more so than in your concepts of impatience and time, that when that manifestation is very nearly manifested, a human will say, even unconsciously, it's taken too long, it will never happen. Earning is strongly related to these concepts and these beliefs. In order to earn a thing, you are activating beliefs about your deficiencies and your capacity to overcome them, to fix them, or to address them in some way in an amount of time that you believe must be required for that desire to be sufficiently fulfilled. Were you to flex ever so slightly your idea of time and how quickly you need that thing to be addressed, you would feel a sense of ease, a sense of allowing, which might even translate to you in your experience as a sense of appreciation or worthiness of the thing that you perceive. As you continue to go forward, you will be able to play more and more, you might say, with your interactions with time. What has until now been a sort of binding structure of your experience here will begin to become more conscious to you and also more flexible and fluid. And in so doing, you will be able to more clearly see aspects of yourself that were driven by this concept. Beloved ones, you are infinitely worthy of all things that you desire. The fact that you are able to perceive the desire is manifestation, is evidence of your resonance with that frequency. Be easy on yourselves as you become aware of these sensations of earning and needing to earn, and look in those experiences to your beliefs about the time that you think will be required in order to, quote unquote, get to that place. In so doing, you may find that ideas for easier things and easier allowing come to you. And in so doing, you will find a sense of earning diminish in your day-to-day observations and a sense of joyful receiving expand in your day-to-day experiences. Things will move from the lists of things you wish you had to a sort of present moment awareness of all the things that are flowing to you and the evidence you are beginning to see of all of those things. Said another way, if you remove the barrier of time, your energetic perceptions grow quite clear. And desire moves from being a thing that you must take action to get to being signposts on the road you are already flying down. We love you infinitely, beloved ones, and we look forward to speaking with you more about these topics in the future. the future. I hope you could feel the smile on their face as they said that because they were teasing us a little bit at the end. I'm so glad they've gotten into the topic of time because this has been one of the best topics for me over the years in understanding more about how our existences here are so limited, but also how much they are driven by these beliefs that have been largely unconscious to us. I think it's easy for us as humans, from our human perspective, that as we awaken to something, we sort of take blame for it, or we sort of are like, man, I should have seen that one coming, or I should have been more aware. Or even worse, you can kind of feel like it's sort of insurmountable. And the topic of time is so pervasive to our identities, to everything that we experience here, that the more you get into it, the more you're like, well, F. I mean, we couldn't have ever seen that one coming. You sort of just roll over it or like, wow. But, in doing that, you release the pressure that you put on yourself to have prevented any of this, to have foreseen any of this, to have needed to do anything about it. You start to step into that perspective of just how colossal this belief system complex that we built by way of our resonance here is. And you finally move into sort of like an awe over just how complete of an experience this has been. When I first started hanging out with the chorus, they used to tease me about the concept of time, and I didn't get it for a while. And then one day I finally started to get it. I said, okay, yeah, I could see how a lot of my day to day existence is driven by time. Like I do check the clock a lot. And I definitely wonder how I'll fit in this and that and the other. But, I think that's the extent of it. Like the rest of the time, I really try to be present. I really try and be like in the moment and aware of other people. Now, that was the extent of my understanding of this topic at that time. And so they started teasing me and they'd start calling me clock worshiper. And I mean, completely teasing. But every time I came across a new example of my existence and the relationship with time, they'd say, clock worshiper, just tease me, like just point it out. And I'd say, no, I'm not. And then, a few days later, I'd have another experience of it. They'd say, clock worshiper. I'd say, no, I'm not. And then over time, now it's gotten even more funny where I realize how often I am driven by the concept of time in ways that I wasn't even conscious to. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about the concept of time. Humans have a conscious understanding of time. This usually relates to physical manifestations in our environment. So, our concepts of time revolve around the movement of our planet around our sun, as in one concept of time, that is the changing of seasons, the beginning and end of days, and the passage of years, which is really the movement of our planets with regard to its sun. However, those things mean something more to us because as we move around the sun, there are things that happen over periods of time that humans have learned to identify, but also we accept as being part and parcel of existence. So I'll give you an example that when time passes, things here deteriorate. Deterioration is one of those aspects of time to which humanity right now is very conscious of. So, as we've mentioned before, you and I don't sit around and say, well, right now, another minute's passing. Right now, another minute's passing. right now, another minute's passing. We're very busy in our five senses manifestations all day. And so maybe in the background, we notice that the sun has gotten higher in the sky and now it's setting. Or maybe we notice that it's been a few hours since breakfast and now we're hungry. But there are also aspects to the passage of time that we may not draw our attention to until longer periods of time have occurred. One of those being age. So it would be difficult for most humans to point to the changes in their physical bodies each hour that indicate the passage of time. But after some weeks or some months or some years pass, it's far easier for a human to identify in another human that they have experienced a passage of time. That is, they look more deteriorated. When we look at children and their passage of time, typically we identify it in the idea of growth. Oh, you've gotten so much taller since I saw you last. You're so much bigger. Their voices get deeper, whatever it is. As children age, they typically look more and more like a full grown adult. Most humans would not call this deterioration today, that's just childhood. And then at some point, at some unidentifiable point in a person's life, they hit some sort of apex after which they start to deteriorate. Now, it may be interesting to note that we do not have an agreed age at which most humans hit that apex. Isn't that interesting? Wouldn't we want to narrow in on that and say, if 20 is the number, let's study everything that happens up to 20 and then everything that happens right after, because then maybe in that we would find or identify the inflection point for our deterioration. But it's not that clear to us. It's just life. It's just sort of as you move forward into your 20s and then maybe into your 30s, you're still sort of blossoming into your human life. And then at some point, you start to deteriorate. Now, according to the chorus, they would consider even an infant a clock worshiper, as they tease us, because even a human child is subject to this passage of time. Our perspective on it is just that that child is growing. However, from the perspective of the chorus, from the moment we arrive, we become more and more deeply embedded or deeply connected to the beliefs of limitation. So that child arrives already subject to the bounds of time. That child will grow from the moment it enters into our reality. And the child will not sit there and think, I'm going to grow another inch today, or I'm going to develop more motor skills today. The child just does so. And so while we have portions of our existences here that we prefer, the growing and the blossoming into a full adult, and then we have portions of the passage of time that we do not prefer, which is some other kind of deterioration that we call aging and is displeasing to us. From the chorus's perspective, this trajectory is largely the same. It is a consistent passage because all things that exist here, all things that interact with our belief system complex, are agreeing to this concept of time. So there's this aspect of time in the background that structures our existence here. As in, I can tell that you have experienced a passage of time if I don't see you for 10 years, because when I see you again, you look more aged to me. And we all agree something would be awry if I didn't see you for 10 years. And when I saw you again, you looked the same. Something in my belief system complex would go, red alert. How did she do it? What's going on? Something must have happened. She has not been affected by the passage of time in the same way that all the rest of us have. So you see, this is so quintessential to our identities here and how we participate in the game, that were we ever to detect someone who was not affected by the passage of time in the ways that we are, we would be alarmed, concerned, or we may not even allow ourselves to perceive it. Okay, now what about the more conscious aspects of time that we have in terms of our day-to-day activities? So I'm busy at my desk all day long. I don't remark really on the passage of time over the course of my day when I'm very busy until I look up at the clock and, oh my gosh, 5 hours have passed and I can hardly believe it. So, what was happening in those 5 hours? What happens in our conscious experiences of time in the midst of our day to day activities? For the most part, time is a construct that we use to relate to each other and relate to our environments. In terms of each other, we often use time as a way of structuring or explaining to each other, connecting to each other, aspects of our lives or ways in which we are interacting. I'll give you some examples. Let's say that you and I schedule a meeting for next week. We pick a day and a time at which we will meet. We both know that things might happen between now and then that might change that meeting, but otherwise, that's when we'll see each other again. We do this because, short of infinite flowing inspiration and desire, we don't know when we would meet again. And so we project ourselves into the future on the timeline and set something out there on it to, in a sense, structure what needs to get done and to assure it gets done. One thing that the chorus pointed out to me early on is that every time we put something out into the future on our timeline, we begin to activate beliefs about everything that will need to happen between now and then. In a sense, this is a function of our limitation because if you and I agree to meet next week, now I am thinking about all the things that I will need to get done by the time we meet next week. My brain will begin activating beliefs about all the things that I have to start lining up in order to get those things done. And so, as this churning continues to grow, the meeting next week, what do I have to get done by next week? I have to get these things organized in order to get these things done. As it begins to layer, what we are strengthening is energetically the need to get things done, the need to line ourselves up to that future point in time. In recent epochs, recent centuries even, we have begun to recognize that many things may happen between now and next week when we're supposed to meet that may alter the purpose of that meeting or even the need for that meeting. And we have begun to become a little more flexible in terms of allowing for different things to occur on the path between the present moment and that future point in time that we have planned for. However, humanity is still largely engaged in ensuring that what we said would happen in the future does happen. So let's say 2 days after you and I have agreed to meet a week from now, you receive a very powerful inspiration to take a trip. Now, powerful inspiration, as we have talked about here before, is an energetic indication of direction. Inspiration and desire are very closely related in terms of how they indicate this. And so it's really a straight shot in from your more expanded self of saying, this way, go this way. Now, there are some among us who would say, hey, I can't meet with you next week. Something's come up. I really need to take this trip. Even if you didn't know why, even if you thought it was poor timing, you still follow that inspiration or desire and go. However, the majority of us humans would find it very difficult to change course that quickly because of the number of manifestations that have already piled up on that path on the way to us maintaining our meeting next week. Let me explain. Energetically, according to the chorus, thoughts are manifestations. If you imagine that our perception of our five senses environment only goes so far, we can only see so far and hear so far and etc. And that beyond that is this magical, energetic, free-flowing universe with which we have been out of touch for the purposes of this experience. I might ask you, what's the border? What's the first thing that we perceive? What's the limits of our perception here between that free flowing universe and then all the limitation that we get to experience while we're here? According to the chorus, their answer would be thought. That thoughts, concrete ideas, and things that we have that we think about all day long, whether they are real or imaginary, is that boundary. The first level of manifestation in our existence here is thought. So, just a minute ago, when I said, you and I set a date on the calendar for a week from now, and then I start thinking about what I need to get done by then, and then I start thinking about all the things I need to get in order between now and then, the chain reaction will actually expand even further. I will begin thinking about other stuff I will do between now and then. I will think about what I might do that weekend before our meeting, and etc. That pile of manifestations, as the chorus would call it, energizes, constructs, or reinforces, however you like to say it, that path. Therefore, a human has beliefs about the validity of existence based on the number of manifestations that have already arisen in support of that. And in so doing, if I am standing at a crossroads between this meeting that I've thought about, this meeting that I've had many ideas about, this meeting that I've been planning about, and then now this brand new shiny idea of just going on a trip, my beliefs will activate and begin to evaluate whether or not taking that trip makes sense. And the more beliefs I have on the alternate path to compare that idea to compare that new inspiration to, the more difficult you could say it would be to drop that other path and simply go on the trip. This is why ideas are slow to change in human existence. Perhaps you have experienced this somewhere in your life, or even just being a student of history. When humanity begins to share and spread an idea among us, what we are doing is manifesting more support, more evidence, more piles of manifestation in the line of that idea. And so when someone has a new idea, it's not necessarily that the idea might not be valid or might not be more expansive or might not even be better. But what it comes down to for a human is looking at the pile, the mountain of manifestations that have already come through by way of thoughts, agreements, conversations, books written about the topic, etc. And then looking at this new tiny manifestation that does not have a mountain to support it and saying, yeah, no, I don't see how I can compare that thing to everything else that I've manifested so far. I don't see how I can just drop this mountain and switch over to that. And so what happens instead is a very gradual building of a mountain up and around that new idea. So some humans will decide they want to contemplate it. Some humans will write some books about it. Some humans will then have some conversations about it. And you can almost watch as these new ideas gain their own momentum until finally they hit what some call a tipping point, which is sort of a mass acceptance. E.g., the mountain of manifestations around that new idea has grown so large that it's easily accessible by anyone in the belief system complex, as easily accessible as the old idea was. And so that new idea becomes part and parcel of human consciousness. So in this case, what is time doing? What is the function of time in this example? So we've looked at time in terms of us relating to each other and putting out a date on the calendar. But now there's this energetic aspect to it, isn't there? That the more you project out into your future and then think backwards from it, the more you are limiting that period of time between you and that thing could go any other way. Because why? As we talked about in the episode on control, if stuff starts to show up that was not in your mental manifestations about how that time period would go, it will feel to you as though things are going out of control. So when that idea comes up of that trip, you have no context, you have no imagining for that. And by contrast, this other idea of how you thought that week would go is very strong, is very energized in your mind. And so if you went on that trip, even if you took the leap, you could say, and went on the trip and canceled the meeting and etc., you as a human would be plagued at times by a sense of things potentially being out of control. Because unconscious to you, these thoughts are going to still be energized. And so you will have these thoughts that come up to you and say, okay, but then when are we going to get that meeting done? When are we going to get those things done that we thought we needed to? How else is this going to work out? If we don't do that, then do we still need to do that, etc., right? I know some of you have felt this as you have adopted or even considered a strong change in course. There are inevitably a lot of questions that need to be answered. And those questions are typically all based on a mental projection that you created, manifestation by manifestation, thought by thought, in a different direction. So now you understand why I might have been driving along in my car thinking that I was going to go do a thing, get several things done before I picked up my son or got to work or whatever. And then I would get this desire, I would get this idea for something else. And then I think, oh, that's a great idea. Well, maybe I can do that later. And the chorus would say, clock worshiper. And I'd say, what? And I'd think about what I just thought about. And I could feel their teasing love. So I knew there was something in there for me to become conscious of. And the first thing that my human perspective latched onto was, oh, I said I would do that later. I gave myself a time-based reason to not follow that desire and that inspiration in this moment. But of course, the chorus always has a larger energetic suggestion that they're making. And most of the time, they wait for us to come to it of our own accord. And so in this case, I didn't understand that I had already created a mental projection of how that morning would go. I would do this errand, I would do that errand, I would do that errand, and then I might have time for that thing. It seemed so nominal. It seemed so insignificant. That's just what humans do. In fact, most days we wake up already having in mind a vision of how that day will largely go. You drop off the kids at school, you have breakfast, you get to work, you have some meetings, you drive home, the same commute you always do, right? You already, whether we know it or not, have constructed a mental projection of how that day will go. And then in that way, if anything comes in that we have not already imagined as a possibility, in so doing, we energize, that is, we reinforce our own limitation that that day could go any other way. And we coming from this perspective may not really understand that as being a function of time. Do you see what I mean? We'll say, oh, we haven't imagined it differently. This must be about our sense of control, etc. But as the chorus pointed out today in their message, if you take away the structure of time itself, meaning you wake up and there is no clock, There is nowhere you have to be by a certain time. There are no such things as meeting times. There are no such things as deadlines. You simply wake up. Can you imagine how much more easily you might allow for the unexpected to come through? Because you are not constantly lining yourself up to how much time is left to achieve the things you thought you wanted to do that day. Instead, if you were of infinite time and something unexpected came up, it may be more likely that you would allow yourself to experience or engage in that because you would have none of the belief systems that would activate about, well, when are we going to do this other stuff? Well, will we be able to drop off the kids on time? Well, are we going to be late to work? There is always a background clock, a background structure and understanding of time for humans active in our belief systems. This is another point that the chorus made today. They said, it's funny to us because as we watch you, you are unaware of this ticking clock, but we can see it. And we understand that for most human activities, there is a period of time that a human will allow to pass before beliefs get activated that tell the human that if it hasn't happened by now, it's never going to happen at all. The sense that we get that these beliefs are starting to get activated is what we call impatience. And then, as those beliefs continue to be activated and the rest of that time passes, we call that sensation impossible. Watch any child begin to get frustrated as they are trying to make something happen, and you will see these belief systems at play. It is an exacerbated example, of course, because they are just coming into these beliefs, but the same could be said for any adult. Now, if you pan out even further and you look across humanity, what you will start to notice, generally speaking, are these concepts of how long a thing should take before it just isn't going to happen at all. Is it possible for an individual to have slightly more beliefs or fewer beliefs about these things? Yes, sure. That's our perceived difference. That's what we would call a perhaps patient person and perhaps an impatient person. And what we are actually seeing is their connection to or activation about beliefs about time. Or said another way, their ability to release the pressure of time. When someone is getting easily frustrated, what you are actually watching has nothing to do with the thing that they are actually trying to accomplish. Whether they are building something out of wood or trying to program something on a computer or trying to figure out a science experiment or creating some sort of art with crayons, it does not actually matter what the activity is or what they are trying to achieve. What you are seeing is their activation of beliefs of the period of time that they are allowing for this thing to appear. And as that window of time closes, their energetic friction that you are seeing manifests as the emotion of frustration, a particular style of which we might call a combination of impatience and defeat. As the chorus pointed out today, this is an incredible structure of our experience of limitation. Because if there's a little manifestation, I want you to imagine like a little ball of light. Happy little manifestation ball of light floating to you, floating to you, floating to you. And your experience here is one of creating a distance between yourself and that manifestation to delay or thwart in some way the experience of receiving, then as that little bubble floats closer and closer and closer to you, what we built are beliefs, in a sense, that block the bubble, is one way to think of it. So it's maybe way out there across the room, and you've got some ideas about finiteness and insufficiency. So maybe you can't even perceive that idea. And then it gets a little bit closer to you and a little bit closer to you. You're like, wow, that sounds great. That's something I really, really want to do. And then as it gets closer to you, we have these sort of like karate chop actions that sort of knock the bubble out of our perception. And some of those are the beliefs about time. And as the chorus pointed out, some of these will become the most activated the closer the manifestation comes. So as it's across the room, yeah, sure, there's some stuff that keeps us from perceiving it. But then as it gets closer and closer and closer, it's like defenses go up. All sorts of things activate to prevent us from receiving that manifestation on the five senses. And one of the most powerful ones that comes up right before the little bubble of light reaches your eyeballs or your hands or your ears or whatever way it was going to manifest on the five senses is the belief in time that if it hasn't come yet, it never will. And in that final blow, despite the fact that the little bubble of manifestation is right in front of your nose, you will not perceive it because you believe it is impossible to be perceived. But we're starting to catch on to this, aren't we? So much so that you and I can have a conversation about this right here and now in this podcast. We already know that this is a thing. We sense this. We have quotes about it. It's always darkest before the dawn. We talk about needing to persevere even through the last minute. We talk about play the game until the clock buzzes. You got to keep going, is what we often say, because that next page you turn, that next idea you try, that next attempt could be the one that brings all of that stuff that you want through to you. Now, the chorus is basically pointing out that humans everywhere are walking around covered in light bubbles. Perhaps you sense this in some of their descriptions. It's like it's banging down your door, you guys. You are practically right on top of it. You have expanded up and beyond this game so much so that you perceive us, the chorus, and we get to tell you about it. Now, are all humans ready in this moment to realize the bubble of light that's sitting on their nose? Not really, not yet. Everyone awakens in their own time and in their own way, and some of them are not yet done experiencing life without bubbles, life in limitation, life not receiving everything you want in the instant that you want it. And in fact, some humans are very much enjoying the struggle, the 11th hour battle, the pushing yourself to try just one more time, the smashing your invention on the ground and building it again and having it work. There's a lot in the human existence in that final inch between you and the bubble. And that's just 1 inch of what we've created here. Okay, so now we can finally get to the topic of earning, which they introduced today, and it might make a little more sense how this could be an aspect of time. Okay, so I want you to bring to mind something that you believe you are trying to earn. It could be something very very tangible. I'm trying to earn this much money to buy a house, or I'm trying to earn access to this level of something that I've been working towards, or I'm trying to earn a promotion. It could be something very tangible. Or perhaps what you're trying to earn is something a little more intangible. I'm trying to earn the affections of another. I'm trying to earn health. I'm trying to earn something that I believe in my current capacity I am not yet worthy of. I am not yet at the level I need to be in order to get that thing. Perhaps it's because of a deficiency that you might be very well aware of. You need to get more proficient at something, of writing, management, managing your health, whatever it is. Or perhaps it's something that you feel that you have a flaw contained within you, either inherently or created, that keeps you from being able to be worthy of that thing. Okay. So if you have an idea of something in mind, now from our human perspective, we have come to the idea of the fact that I should feel worthy, right? We have that should always in quotation marks. As in, I understand that that's a possibility. I understand that other people feel worthy of this and don't think twice about receiving it. But for some reason, I do. I don't think I deserve it, or I don't know, but for some reason, I don't have it. And I feel maybe ashamed that I don't, or I feel like I just can't. And it's that last part that the chorus would focus in on. They would say it's your own sense of the impossibility of that thing that causes you to activate beliefs about earning, about doing something. And then off you go. You start taking lessons, or you read books about it, or you see a shrink, or whatever it is, right? And they say, okay, but back up to that point where you noticed that that thing was impossible. And we would say, yeah, it's impossible because and we would fill in the blank. I'm an idiot. I'm always sick. I drank too much in my younger years, blah, 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 right? We have all these reasons from the five senses manifestation perspective of why that thing is impossible. And the chorus is saying, okay, we see that, and we see those beliefs that are active for you. But if you pan out just a little bit, zoom out a little bit, in whatever direction you want, step away from it for just a second and borrow their perspective. And they say, okay, now you're looking down at it. Do you see all those little ribbons of light floating around and flying and doing all sorts of things? And you say, okay, yeah, maybe I see a bunch of strands of light and they're moving every which way and they're doing all sorts of stuff. And they say, yes, those are your beliefs. And see how they're lighting up around different humans? Yeah, okay. So the humans are activating those, and then they are experiencing limitation, or the not receiving of what they want, in one example. And you go, okay, can we just blow up all those strands of light? And the Course says, no, it's beautiful and it's perfect and it's everything you came here to create. Silly. And you say, fine. And then they said, okay, but let's move out a little more. Let's move out away from it until finally those little strands of light are very tiny and the humans are very teeny tiny. And you notice this rope of light that surrounds those little ribbons of beliefs and then also all the humans. And you say, what's that? And they say, that's the construct of time. All the beliefs that you see down there activated and moving around, all of them are subject to the limitations of the idea of linear time. And so maybe you sit with that for a second kind of watch the light and the ribbon and everything else. And it might start to sink in how much time energizes, amplifies, structures, and reinforces all the beliefs. And so they say, okay, see that one ribbon of light down there? That one that's kind of this color, it's doing this thing. You say, yeah. And they say, okay, that is some of the beliefs that are activating about the impossibility of that thing that you want. You say, okay. And then they say, watch what happens when you push on the idea of time. And so they sort of step on it. This is all for visualizations purposes, by the way. They don't actually step on our ribbon of time, just to be clear. We're just visualizing something here. Although I'm sure that they would. I don't know. It would be an interesting experience, wouldn't it? They're all curiosity all the time. Okay, so we step on the little ribbon of time and we put more pressure. And you watch as the human who's all lit up and connected to these things says to themselves, I'm so stressed. This is never going to get done. And then you push on the barrier of time a little bit more. And then they say, oh my God, I can't do all of this. How is this going to work? And then you push on it a little bit more. And as they look out into the world and they see things that they really want, they don't even contemplate it. They jump right to, that's impossible. And so then the Course says, okay, but let's do the reverse. So you lift up that ribbon of time, you lift it off of that human. And then the human sort of keeps going. They get an idea for something and they're not sure how to do it, but they just keep going. They don't get slowed down by stress. They don't get slowed down by an immense pressure, a burden of pressure. And then they never get slowed down by the idea that something could be impossible. Because from this perspective, they'll never run out of time. And so today, the Course is saying, you can do this. And you say, I can do what? And they say, you can move around your ribbon of time. And you say, what? I just found out that there was a ribbon of time, so I don't know how to do that. And they're saying, you're awakening to this. You're awakening to that this is a thing that is active in your life in more ways than just days passing or years going by or wrinkles and gray hair. Time is much more than that in our existence. And as you awaken to that, you are going to be able to play, was their specific word, and they choose words very specifically. You will be able to play with your own relationship with time. And so as you're looking out into the world, it's something you want really badly. You want to become a star on stage. You want to write or create this thing. You want to start a business. And then, whew, like a wall that shoots up, all of these beliefs surround you with how would you do that? Where would you get the money? You don't have the talent, blah, 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 blah. And all those things are energized by the concept of time. Because, friend, if you were infinite, who cares? You've got plenty of time to find the money. You've got plenty of time to build the business. You've got plenty of time to write a draft. You've got an infinite amount of time. And so what they're saying is that bubble of light is right in front of your nose. And if you just say to yourself, well, What if I had all the time in the universe? That simply by even resonating with that idea, you have just played with the ribbon of time in your existence. It doesn't take anything more than that. And in that sensation, you'll feel a little bit of like oh, yeah, I don't have to do that today. I don't even have to do that this week. And from that perspective, all sorts of glimmers of ideas from all the bubbles of light that are surrounding you will begin to shine through. And in an instant like that, you'll say to yourself, oh, yeah, I met that guy. He said he could give me that loan. I totally forgot. Oh, yeah, I have a notebook of song ideas. Where is that notebook? All these things that are the beginning of receiving things in an instant begin to be perceivable by you. The more conversations I have with the Course about the concept of time, the less of an antagonistic relationship I feel like I have with it. I have spent a lot of energy trying to move around time or thwart it or make it bigger than it is. I have tried to make myself more efficient in all aspects. I've tried to run my errands in the most efficient route possible. I try to line things up in my day so that there's the least amount of commute time between places. I have spent a lot of energy trying to achieve more in a duration of time or to even defeat it. But the more I talk to the Chorus about time, the more I understand it as a structure, as a mechanism of the game itself. That it has been almost indestructible as a form of our own limitation, which we wanted to experience while we were here, but also being an energized tenant of the game itself, being an energized principle of the game itself. It is extremely reliable. And as I've gone forward, I've started to realize that I could do more on a thing right now. Or if I allow for a passage of time, I can almost depend upon that something will show up that relates to this thing. It's like a combination of inspiration and time. When I'm sitting at my desk and I'm working on something, at some points, I feel my inspiration move in a different direction, in a different room, to a different idea. And of course, I have all these beliefs about like, no, I got to finish this thing. I got to get this done right now. And then I go, oh, right now. What's up, time? I see you. And as I sort of step back and say, okay, what if I had an infinite amount of time? It becomes a lot more clear. I say to myself, oh, well, then, yeah, I definitely get up and just go do this other thing now. But even more miraculous than that is as I have continued to follow my inspiration and release the pressure that I put on myself through the concept of time, I have begun to depend upon time itself. So as I get up out of the desk chair, there's a part of me that wonders, but I don't know what to do about this next part of the book, or I don't know what to do about this next thing that I'm writing. And it wants to stay there and hash it out and fix it. But there's another growing part of me that has learned to depend on time itself. And many times I have experimented and said, well, let's see what happens if we leave it alone for a day. Let's see what happens when we come back to it. And friends, time and time again, something shows up, or my perspective is different by the time I get back, or something else happens in that period of time that brings a new perspective to that thing that I was working on that I didn't even know to look for. So, really, it's up to you. And that is, of course, what the chorus was saying today. You can play with the nature of time in whatever ways that you want. It's far more fluid and flexible than we yet understand. And an awakening that is bringing to consciousness these aspects of how time interacts with our existence, we will have the opportunity to experience it in new and different ways. So let's go back to that thing that you feel like you need or want to earn. And you say, Katie, I am so deficient in these ways. I want this thing, but and you fill in the blank with all of your deficiencies. And then you say, so to overcome all of these deficiencies, I got to do this, and then I got to do that, and then I need to get here. I don't even have that yet. I'm not sure how I would even get that. And then you would say, so is it that I just have an infinite amount of time to do everything on this list? And I would say, yeah, that's part of it. That's our understanding, and that's valid. But also, I don't put a whole lot of weight into that list. And you say, but why? And I say, well, I know that that's the mirage. That's the illusion. That's the curtain. And you say, the curtain between me and what? And I say, oh, between you and the bubble of light that's right in front of your nose. And then I say, let's back up a sec. Before that list, and even before you recognized all those deficiencies, what came first? And you might say, well, I guess the recognition that I want a thing and that it's not here. Uh-huh. Keep going. And then that I got to do stuff to get there. Okay. What happened between the it's not here yet and I got to do stuff? I don't know. I guess it just started to feel like it's not possible where I am today. And then I say, now you're getting closer to it. And then I say, have you ever seen any of those action movies where at the end, something's going to happen in an imminent amount of time that'll just destroy the whole world? You know, kind of like the aliens are about to invade, or the giant nuclear bomb has a clock on it that's ticking down the final seconds. And you go, okay, yeah, I guess so. And then I say, wouldn't that scene be a little silly if there wasn't a ticking clock? If there was just like a bomb in a room and everyone was freaking out trying to defuse it, but there was actually nothing ticking it down to make it explode? And you say, yeah, I mean, I guess so. I said, and if you were watching that movie, wouldn't you kind of be like, why are they all scrambling around this bomb? Why are they all rushing and freaked out about how much time is left to get it done? I mean, if there's no ticking clock, like they could all go get PhDs in bombs and have a nice lunch out and then just come back to it later, right? You say, yeah, okay. And then you go, oh, there's no ticking clock on the thing I'm trying to earn, is there? And I say, nope. And you say, wow, okay. So I don't need to scramble all over this bomb? And I say, nope. Then you say, okay. you know what? I'd really just rather go on a walk outside right now. And I say, that's a great idea. You might even run into a bubble of light while you're walking. Because you know you've already earned it. Thanks so much for listening. We hope you found these messages to be helpful. May they accelerate you on your path wherever you'd like it to go. For more information, check out our website at katieandthechorus.com. There you will find show quotes, episode transcripts, details on our book, The Book of Human Awakening, as well as our newsletter sign up. Visit katieandthechorus.com. Thanks again. See you next time.